Hello, listeners. If you've enjoyed these narrations, please click on that like and subscribe button. I'm one of those people that always has their earbuds in, working out, doing homework, taking a walk through the hills by my house. I just have to have my music playing, and people look down on that. Look, I get it, I really do. I'll be the first to admit that my generation is hopelessly addicted to technology, with their iPhones and AirPods and Snapchat, and God only knows what else. But it's not like that in my case. I actually used to enjoy the silence, the stillness. That's why I went up those hiking paths to begin with, to be alone with my thoughts in the wilderness. The only soundtrack, the songs of local birds cheering, serrating each other. It was beautiful zen. It's not like that anymore though. Most people are afraid of the dark to some extent, whether they'll admit it to you or not. It's eerie. When the lights fade, who knows what's lurking out in the shadows? That could be a burglar, a predator. It's evolutionary, instinctive, nothing to be ashamed of. But why does that stop at light? There are things we see and cannot hear. There are things we hear and cannot see. What about smell? Odorless, silent gases can kill just as efficiently as a beast or a blade. Hell, they're probably worse. We go out of our way to add fragrances to natural gas so we can detect leaks. We put reflectors on jackets and bicyclers so they're visible at night. The point is, it's perfectly logical to be unnerved by, or even afraid of what looks in the spaces between what you can see and smell. But what about the spaces between sounds? You might think that I'm crazy, but after ruminating on this concept for a while, I started getting pretty unsettled whether the bird songs ended on my natural walks. You know that old saying, it's quiet, too quiet. There's a handful of adages, movie quotes and the like about how absolute silence is suspicious at best and malevolent at worst. I think we're subconsciously aware of the chitters and just don't talk about them openly. Yeah, that's right, the chitters. Let me backtrack just a little. After a brisk hike one March afternoon, the wind died down and the birds stopped their gleeful songs. I got the chills. It was just eerily quiet and I didn't like it one bit. So I decided I'd start whistling to myself as I walked back down the hill towards my house, feeling a little bit better about it. The next few hikes went without incident, but I had enough of those spooky moments of silence that I actually eventually started bringing earbuds with me just in case. Sometimes I'd stand on top the vista at the peak, overlooking my hometown. I'd turn up the music, close my eyes, spread my arms, and just feel the wind whip around me. It gradually became part of my weekly ritual. Over time, I became more and more uncomfortable with the normal, everyday silence as well. If I didn't have something in the background, even just white noise, I started to get itchy, chills, and goosebumps. Eventually, I was on one of my hikes, Iron Maiden's latest album blaring in my ears, and a smile plastered across my face, and a spring in my step. And that's when tragedy struck. With a depressing beep, the battery in my earbuds died. I was now alone, on top of the mountain peak, with nothing but the sounds of the wind and birds to comfort me. A few months ago, this would actually have been enough in a nice day, but today, I heard a chitter underneath the songs of the birds chapping. I'd never noticed it before. It chilled me to the bones for some reason. And then the birds stopped. And that's when I could clearly hear the chittering getting louder. It was maddening. It wasn't quite intelligible speech, but it had a clear structure and cadence to it that didn't sound like mere wildlife or random noise. I looked around in a panic, my heart racing, but I couldn't see anything out of the ordinary. Hello? I stammered out at last. The chittering stopped for a moment and then resumed. Who's there? I can't understand you. Do you speak English? Every time I spoke, the chittering cut out and then would resume as soon as I finished my sentence. Right, I'll just be going then. It got louder after this one. I could swear I could make out a few words this time. Mine, it said, punctuated on either side by mindless chatter. Listen. It eventually peppered into the cacophony. For me. Please. This last phrase felt earnest somehow. It honestly felt like whatever was speaking to me needed my help somehow. Did you say something? Hello? I spoke out. You know the weirdest part? The chitters didn't fade in and out or even overlap my speech for even a nanosecond. The instant I made a noise, they were gone, and as soon as I stopped, they were back in full force again. Amidst the cacophony, this time I could have swore I heard, "Run." So you know what? I did. I bolted back down the mountain path as quickly as I came, tripping a handful of times and nearly spraining my ankle in the process. But with every footstep, the beings stopped their subtle conversation, if only for an instant. Every rock that fell down the slope briefly quelled their whispers. At one point, I couldn't run any further. I stopped to collect myself, breathing heavily. I couldn't hear them anymore, but the relief melted away as I caught my breath in my gasp, and the pants became sparser and quieter. Sure enough, as soon as I was breathing normally, there they were. Play, I made out between the otherwise indecipherable hellish noises. Well, that's terrifying as all gets out. Despite too quiet the entities, I just started babbling, singing, screaming, doing anything I could to fill the terrifying silence lest the chitters return. I probably looked like a raving lunatic, but I was more afraid of those things than the judgment of my neighbors. I finally made it home, plunged my headphones onto the charger and cranked up the speakers on my laptop. In a different era, this could have been a calamity. But in today's connected world of Spotify and other forms of endless streaming content, I could let my guard down and just go about my life. Every now and then, a song would have a long, slow fade at the end, and I'd just barely catch a hint of the chittering noise before the next track began. But at this point, it was more annoying than terrifying. I slept with a loud fan turned on. I never let my playlist reach an end. It would suck if I had roommates, I guess, but I live alone at this stage in my life, so things were maybe not good or normal, but at least bearable. Outside of moments of dread whenever we had power outages or something of the like. Eventually, though, I barely noticed the noises when there was a lapse in the soundtrack of my life. You know what? Screw it, life was good. And then midterms rolled around. My professor, understandable, mandated that I unplug to take the test. He was already annoyed that I had been jamming in one ear during his lectures, but this was college, and he figured if I wanted to waste my money listening to a podcast instead of the class I'm paying for, well, that's my prerogative, right? But for the test, there was no getting around it. I shut down my tunes and did my best to tap my feet, click my pen, crunch papers, whatever I could to keep the voices at bay without disrupting my classmates. But I couldn't maintain the racket indefinitely, and eventually my mind was once again overflowing with mindless chatter, surrounded periodically, barely discriminate commands. Kill, it ordered between murmurs. Rend their flesh, it followed up. Red with their blood. Okay, that settles it. I need help. Time to see a shrink or someone. I tuned it out and continued writing, but it was getting harder and harder to focus. My grip tightened around the mechanical pencil. I heard the flimsy plastic beginning to crack. Hurt, it uttered in voices, more muttering. Burn it away. There was no emotion in its command. It was completely flat, with no effect whatsoever. Whatever pleading intelligence begged me for help on the mountain was long gone from the ambience of noises. I can't, I hissed reflectively, gritting my teeth. That's when Dr. Lee approached in his usually stealthy manner and slammed a ruler on my desk. "Can I help you with something, Mr. Morgan?" I looked up at him, tears in my eyes. "Sorry, sir, no. I'm fine." Every word spoken or heard offered me brief respites from the droning, and I began to dread the end of every sentence, bracing myself for the impact of more chittering and insane orders. I sniffled and tried to stop crying, but to no avail. The auditory assault was relentless. Maybe you should have actually paid attention in class." He scoffed and returned to his walk. I kept my mouth shut tight against all my instinct. I just did my best to tune the voices out and get back to the essay. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't stand the drones of voices. I had to leave early, and without that test, I would have failed that class badly, so I just stopped attending. Well, I assume I would have failed anyway, but the next week my school shut down without warning after a mass death that occurred that Tuesday. Officially, it was blamed on an accidental gas leak leading to an explosion, but rumors persisted that Dr. Lee's night class went ape and ripped each other to shreds that day. Rumors are wild, aren't they? I gave it no credence at first and just thanked my luck that I wasn't on campus that night. But the next time my headphones died, I heard a new command that chilled me to my bone. "Keep spreading us." What the hell does that mean? Then I heard incoherent screaming, and then the first of many. But this one wasn't in the voice of the usual tormentor. I'd known that voice anywhere. That was Dr. Lee. Now it's back to the usual chittering. I've quarantined myself to my room because as far as I can tell, I'm either crazy or infected by something that lives in the silence between words. Neither option really leaves me much of a choice though. Every now and then, between songs, I hear Dr. Lee pleading for help, but mostly, it's just chittering and screaming these days. I can mostly tune it out at this point, but if I pass into someone else, there's no telling what the voices between will make them do. So please, if you hear chittering one day, I'm sorry. We must have crossed paths. Just ignore them the best you can. Play loud music. Anything. Just don't listen to the noise in between silence.